Returning to Katahdin, an Appalachian Trail dream. Have you ever dreamt of hiking the AT? Bruce Matson did, so we're going to follow him every step of the way. Hi everybody, thanks for coming back to Returning to Katahdin, an Appalachian Trail dream, sponsored by our very good friends at Trailtopia. This week, we're on to episode number 12, Winter Supplement. With Bruce's hike getting ever closer, we're concentrating on the fact that he's starting his adventure in February. So he needs to pack a few extra items to ward off the inevitable buttock-clenching cold that he will doubtless encounter. As you already know, Bruce is something of a planner and has found a really good bit of software that is used to list and record the weight of his stuff. I've added the link into the show notes and you'll see that you can click on each item to see what it is. But before we go to Bruce, who fancies a bit of dessert? Do you remember those days on the trail when you really need to treat yourself? You know, those days when you fall in the mud or the rain starts running down your neck, the rocks are driving you crazy, or even when you're just fed up. You need a boost, and when that happens, stop hiking, take off your pack, and treat yourself to one of Trailtopia's scrumptious desserts. Why not go for Rocky Road pudding, a rich chocolate pudding loaded with mini marshmallows and toasted slivered almonds. By the time you get that into your system, you'll be warm, toasty, and satisfied. Try Trailtopia Adventure Food, the best of home cooking away from home. By the way, before we move on, several people have contacted me to see if they can support Bruce's mission to raise $250,000 for the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. I spoke to Bruce about it, and this is what he told me. Okay, Bruce, a number of people have been reaching out to me. Actually, Clay, funnily enough, Clay Bonneman Evans was one of them, very kindly wanted to help support your fundraising and didn't know what to do with it or where to send it. What's the situation in terms of collections in this particular, for this hike?
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. And Clay, thanks for your interest and anyone else. I am trying to set a new record. We call it the RTK AT Challenge. And it's quite a challenge, but I'd love people to help. And I love the fact they're interested. I am embarrassed that the website isn't more obvious. That will be fixed by the time you hear this podcast. And anyone who is interested, please go to returningtokatahdin.com, and if you click on the support or donate button, it should be very easy and obvious how to give, and you should get an automated response from the ATC with a 501c3 letter that you can save for tax purposes. And so cool. Thanks for anyone interested in doing that.
That's great. Appreciate that. Thanks for that. So, website will be working this weekend to accept any donations if you'd like to support Bruce's efforts to help the ATC. Now, let's have a chat with Bruce and hear how he intends to keep warm on those freezing February nights in the darkness of the woods with snoring, flatulence and chattering teeth all around him. Here's Bruce. Okay, we're back with Bruce again. Hi Bruce, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good.
Good. Not long to go now. the time's going fast.
It's remarkable how fast the days are going. So the excitement, it only builds, and there's no thoughts of regret or cold feet.
Fantastic. And talking of which, funnily enough, that's a really good segue. We got a question. We're going to talk about your winter supplement this week, but we've got a question from a listener, Elizabeth McDonough. And Elizabeth is going to hike the AT next year in February. And she says, I'm not worried about the cold. I know how to keep my core temperature up. I'm not worried about staying warm in my tent at night. Well, I am worried about, and this is one of my worries as well, is keeping my feet warm while hiking. What is Bruce going to do?
Sure. I think the key, I'm no expert in this. I think the key to keeping your feet warm generally while hiking in the cold weather is actually to keep moving. I'll tell you what I'm doing, and I feel like I've had a few experimental trips just to remind myself whether or not this system is going to work or not.
Yeah.
And it has worked for me in some pretty cold weather. This is technically, or it's part of what I'm calling my winter supplement.
Yeah.
And what that means is that I have what I would call my standard kit or my standard equipment that gives me a base weight for non-winter conditions of around 21 pounds.
Right.
And then I've supplemented that with a number of items I think we're going to talk about today that I think will better protect me against the winter elements. And those items make up what I call the winter supplement. And that adds almost 5 pounds to my pack for the first month or so when that type of weather is more likely.
Yeah.
So with that sort of introduction, the answer to the question, I believe, is I like to wear a liner sock with a good wool sock, and that's all I'll wear. I like the liner because I've had a lot of success with them because my hiking experience has been very, very few blisters when I use a liner. And I think when you have something that seems to work, stick with it.
Absolutely.
Yes. I'm going to have a thin polyester liner sock, which will help with wicking moisture, and then a medium weight wool sock, which is there for comfort and warmth. The hiking shoe I've selected for at least the winter portion is an Oboz Tamarack Low, but it's a waterproof version. And many hikers I've spoken to, many experienced backpackers have recommended you not use a waterproof shoe.
Yeah, I've heard that many times as well. What's the rationale behind that?
And I've heard this consistently, that the reason you shouldn't use a waterproof shoe is that you can't keep the water out of your shoes when it's raining. It runs down your legs and fills your shoes no matter what you do. And the real challenge is drying your shoes out. And once waterproof shoes become wet, they're much slower at drying out. And that seems to be a pretty well, at least documented recommendation from my research.
Yeah.
But I've decided that for the cold, the potential slush and mud and snow and winter conditions, the waterproof shoe will, one, actually help being waterproof. Two, waterproof shoes actually help with wind resistance. And wind in cold weather can be really a challenging aspect of being out there.
Yeah.
And I'm going to reconsider whether I want to go to a non-waterproof version when I get through the first 4 or 5 weeks. But for now, I really like my choice because I have used it a number of times in shakedown hikes. As most of the East Coast, we had a pretty cold freeze here for 2 weeks, and I was able to go out in single-digit weather and hike with my setup, and I was quite comfortable temperature-wise. So I think my sort of not terribly expert answer to the question is, I think with reasonable socks, a good shoe, you can stay warm as long as you keep walking. I think that when the weather is very cold, you have to have shorter breaks because you can't really sit still that long when it's in the teens and the wind's blowing. But I believe from my experience that if you keep moving and you have short breaks, the heat you generate from carrying 30 pounds, from climbing up and down mountains, will translate into warmth in your feet, and you'll stay warm. I've
got to tell you that my experience of it is very similar to yours. They do get wet. You're right. When it rains, your feet get wet inside, and then it is difficult to dry them. But frankly, that was just part of being wet. I was a big guy. I'm a big guy again now, And I found that you do generate sufficient heat throughout your body if your blood flow is generally good, and mine generally is pretty good. And I was always warm. And if I had to put them on wet in the morning, and I did several times, they soon dried out because I really, really worked hard in walking fast enough to make sure I was warm enough. And it worked for me every time. So I don't regret having waterproof shoes. And I had waterproof shoes through the entire, or boots rather, through the entire trip.
Okay, very good. One thing Elizabeth might think about if she skis, I used to ski not a terrible lot, but I skied because I came from New England. I did both downhill and cross country skiing. And if you think about it, my feet were often cold skiing downhill. But when I did cross country skiing, because of the activity level, I had these, as most cross country skiers do, relatively modest leather shoes. And we were out in very cold weather, but the activity level just kept your body, including your feet, warm. So I think that is going to translate to the hiking experience as well.
Okay, right. Well, look, I've looked at your list, and I'm going to, if you don't mind, assume you're happy for me to do this, post the link, because you've got it on this thing. What's it called? The gear thing? Can't remember what it's called now.
There's two nice websites, one called Lighter Pack, I think it's lighterpack.com, and geargrams.com. And I use geargrams.com. And I think someone very kindly put up this program where you can create a library, and from your library of gear, you can create a bunch of different lists, and you collect the weights, and you can link it to photographs, and you can categorize it. And then you can actually create reports. So if anybody goes to the link that you're going to post, they can actually see my list, and he actually creates a pie chart out of it. This is for sleep system, this is for clothing, this is for food, or whatever. So it's a nice little program, and I'm happy for you to post that.
Right, it's very cool actually. Now, and there's clothing section, which we'll get to last. There's the sleep system, which I'm going to go with second. But first of all, let's go with the miscellaneous, which is a space blanket. And I know what that is, obviously. And you've written in brackets, emergency blanket, in brackets rather, New York City Marathon. That was one were you given after the race, or what happens with that?
Yeah, and when the marathon was over, you've sort of exhausted all your energy, and very common at these marathons for them to wrap you with a blanket or something. And one year they wrapped us with this sort of aluminum foil type blanket, which I think of as those old space blankets. So instead of needing to buy one, I've always sort of kept this. It's got New York City Marathon logos all over it. But,
is it effective?
The price is right.
Is it effective?
Why not use it? And and it's just that for 1.9 ounces. It's just that extra item to put in there. And I'd like to think I'm bringing it more for other people who might be in distress. But if for some reason I was in a tough situation, wrapping yourself in that can be effective.
Yeah. Well, actually, that is the other thing you've got in there which is one of your heaviest things you're taking with you extra, which is still only 13.5 ounces, are the Cotulla microspikes. And is that specifically for snow or just icy conditions?
Well, both. It's specifically included to deal with the ice and or snow. Soft snow without iciness added in, you probably can just hike through without microspikes. But as it gets worn and packed, it can get more slippery. But primarily, it's for those snowy, icy conditions, so that you get some grip on the foot tread.
Yeah, really important those are as well. So are they? Do they stretch over your shoes? Or are they just metallic things that stretch over your shoes? They do. Okay.
And this is a complete new item for me. I've never used it. I haven't experimented with it. I've spoken to enough people who really encouraged me to take them. I decided to follow that advice because if you're in tough conditions, really tough conditions, the most important thing is to get out of them. And if you can't get out of them because you can't move yourself effectively because you're slipping and sliding and falling, then you really do have a problem. So I'm willing to take a pretty big weight penalty here because a lot of smart people have said you just have to have those.
Yeah.
And
but if you look at the weather now, the weather out there now is pretty darn snowy, isn't it? Or it has been pretty darn snowy recently.
it has been, but I pulled up on my my laptop that I looked at every day, and I've added a second weather widget, and so I can look and see exactly what the temperature is supposed to be in Dahlonega.
All right.
And this Sunday, it's going to get up to 60 degrees in Dahlonega, Georgia.
Nice.
So who knows?
Who knows?
I know being out there for a month in February and March, I'm going to run into some cold weather.
Yeah.
But I never answered your question. The microspikes are basically kind of this rubberized device you pull over your boots and pull over the toe and the heel of your boot, and it reveals these sort of mini steel spikes.
Yeah, I've got them myself. I think they're great. I really do. Now the sleep system, you're taking a specifically different sleeping pad. We talked about the big three. This is a cold weather bag then, isn't it? I meant pad, but
the pad. Yeah, so the pad is literally brand new, and I got an email from Big Agnes yesterday saying they had gotten it in and they were sending it to me. So I might be the first person ever on the ET to use what's called the Big Agnes 3rd Degree. It's a closed foam pad, and it's actually pretty light. Only weighs 8 ounces, but it has a really good R factor. So, and I think I mentioned in the other podcast that it's partially designed for mountaineering and 4-season weather. And not only is it comfortable and light, it's got this great R factor, and it's probably one of the things that really just caused me to say to take it was, if I have to sleep on snow, this closed foam pad with this great R factor really will help me stay warm at night.
Yes. If you have to sleep on snow, oh dear me. And now we mentioned the Mountain Hardwear Phantom. I can't remember what the number was. 15 was it? Phantom 15.
Yes.
And you're going to be switching these things out, obviously. And so we've talked about that. But you've put in your list also the Cedar Summit Reactor, which is the sleeping bag liner, and that's one of those things. I strongly recommend you hold on to that and don't send that back at all. Because sometimes, Bruce, you might want to, in the summer, it gets so warm sometimes. I slept just in my liner, not in a sleeping bag.
And I've had people say that. And I've also heard that, liners are a really good way to keep the dirt more in the liner, and you can wash the liner more often than you have to wash the sleeping bag. So if you think about it, if I have a winter bag and I drop the winter bag, but I keep the liner, then I have a liner with a 3-season bag. And there's pretty good optionality, as you indicated, with both, because the liner with the 3-season bag hopefully will help me with those few nights where I wish I'd not given away the winter bag.
That's an interesting judgment call. That really is, because there's a time when people send their winter gear back. Somebody said to me the time to send it back, if you start in the beginning of March, is Petersburg. I don't know how they work that out. But you're going to have to make that decision one day, and then you could suddenly be hit by bad weather again, couldn't you? So it's a tough decision to make.
Yeah. Yeah, most people have said the same thing. Once you get over Mount Rogers, some people say once you get to Virginia, but the real experts have said, well, you're almost there. A couple days after Damascus, you'll be over Mount Rogers, and then you should feel comfortable if you're otherwise having reasonable weather. And then a lot of people, and I think I plan to do this even in the summertime, a lot of people say to get your winter bag back before you start the White Mountains.
We had fantastic weather through the Whites. My bag was a 30-degree bag. That was more than sufficient for the Whites. But, you never know. It can change. You can get some terrible weather. You can get some great weather. You can get some cold weather in July. So you just never know.
Yeah, I think I can play that by ear. And if there's just a trend, then I can sort of send for the winter bag or just keep working with the system I then have.
Yeah. So that's your sleep system. Now, the clothing, you've got quite a bit of extra clothing here, and I presume you're just simply swapping out like for like when you swap it in for the summer gear.
Yeah, there's a few things that I've got to just make sure I'm not cold. The quick, obvious things are gloves, waterproof mitten shells to go over those gloves, and a balaclava. And for anybody listening, doesn't know what a balaclava is. It's one of those full head mask almost like cap that I think, is sort of the ultimate warm item. One of my shakedown hikes, I was trying to test my layering and in my socks and shoes, and my feet were great.
Yeah.
My body was warm. But the one thing that I was noticing was when the wind blows and it's in the teens, around your ears, around your neck, around your nose, that's where you really felt the cold. And so I've talked to enough people that if I'm going across a bald in North Carolina and it's in the teens, the wind's blowing, I think having a balaclava that covers basically every inch of your head is going to be a very important piece of clothing.
Oh, I totally agree. So, and you might even sleep in it at night sometimes, some nights.
Yes.
I certainly did myself.
Yeah, so those are kind of obvious winter things, having gloves. One of my last, I was sort of, strolling through REI recently, and I saw these mitten shells. And I said, for 2 ounces or less than 2 ounces, these are waterproof. They're made of event, like these breathable waterproof fabrics, and they weigh next to nothing. But I started thinking, if I'm in a cold rain,
yes,
and my gloves get completely wet, that could be a challenging situation. So I thought very quickly and added those waterproof mitten shells to help in that eventuality. But those things are sort of obvious, sort of head and hands when it's really cold.
Sure.
Some of the other clothes really had to do with like comfort sleeping. These base layers are just long underwear, a top and a bottom.
Yeah.
And the top has a hood. I love this piece of equipment. It's got a hood. So I really want to save these for sleeping. Both layers, both the top and the bottom. But I also have the bottom layer as my sort of third layer for hiking if it's really dramatically cold. So I think that if it's just brutally cold, I can wear my base layer bottoms, hiking pants, and then my rain pants, whether it's raining or not. Because rain pants, are really good with the wind. They'll capture the heat of your body. And I think I'd be shocked, actually, if I wasn't too hot hiking in those 3 layers.
I would be amazed if you're not too hot. I did it. One of the early things for me was taking off and putting on clothing. Then you walk for a bit, then you have to take it off again. Then you walk for a bit, and you have to put it on again. Oh, it was relentless. And in the end, instead of putting them away, I'd literally just hang them over my shoulders, ready to put them on again, because there was this moderating or this regulating of temperature that you have to do all the time. And anybody who's done this hike will know that it just changes all the time. Rain pants, I found, I hated them because I just would walk, they would warm me up, and then within seconds I had to take them off again. I just got too sweaty inside because of the rain pants.
Yeah, but I do think that's why they'll be effective in the wintertime, and also why that'll be one of the first items to go.
Right.
Because I promised you could get a picture of me in a rain kilt, and I'm going to switch to the kilt once we get to Virginia, probably.
Are you going to wear it Are you going to wear it like a true Scotsman? Come on, though.
I probably will pass on that. But,
oh, dude. Apparently that's one of the main benefits of a kilt. Who knew? I tell you, falling over backwards and your legs ending in the air, and your commander on your kilt would not be a pretty sight for anybody. Trust me.
No, trust me.
It's funny. So you got Gators as well. I never had Gators. What's the attraction there of Gators for you?
Yeah, I think I think it goes well with the type of hiking shoes I'm using. I'm anticipating, some snow and icy and muddy conditions, and I just think that adds to the ability to move more quickly and I won't say easily, but just move through the hiking experience easier. I do plan to drop those Gators and switch to one of those really lightweight Gators like you've seen Dirty Girl. Gators.
Yeah.
And for people who don't know, that's actually a brand name.
Yes.
And so these I think are very effective when you're in snow conditions, and they're very effective when you have a lot of heavy low brush. My experience is that the trail is sufficiently open that I think a lower, lighter gator is all I will need once I'm out of the winter conditions.
Right. Now, I've looked at this list. I didn't look at the other one. You sent me the other list as your summer gear, I guess. Is there stuff that you're going to keep from here? There's a rain jacket. You're going to keep this, say, the Marmot minimalist rain jacket through the summer?
Actually, I'm not.
Wow.
This is a great jacket. I bought it for the Camino.
Right.
And this was at a time when I was just starting to think about it. And while it's called a Marmot minimalist, it's actually on the heavy side for a backpacking rain jacket.
Right.
So I do have a much lighter. If anyone goes to the website and looks at this gear list, one thing I want them to recognize carefully is that what I've done here is actually put the net difference down as the weight. If you want to see the weight of the actual item, I put that in the description. But where you put the weight, I've only put the incremental difference, the additional amount of weight, because I wanted to be able to look at my winter supplement.
Oh, I wonder what that was. Yes, I see.
So if you so it's incremental. A good example is, we were talking about the minimalist rain jacket. So that jacket is 18 ounces. That's over a pound.
Yeah.
It's a great one. It's a little larger. It's got goes down to your thigh. It's very good, and I'm going to enjoy having the more fulsome rain jacket for the colder weather.
Sure.
But when I switch out, my replacement is half the weight of the minimalist. So when you look at the weight, you see me saving about 9 or 10 ounces. And so it's only the incremental amount that is shown as the weight.
Yeah. It all adds up, doesn't it? It really does.
Yeah, it really does.
Being a man of logistics, you must have loved filling all this stuff in, didn't you?
It was fun. I love this program, and just to do a shout out, I don't know who runs Geargrams, but it's done completely free, and they do have an opportunity on the website to donate, and I think it's great to always go by and help out a little bit whoever's keeping this up for backpackers, because it's a great little tool.
Okay, cool. So that's your winter gear, and so you're going to be sending some or most of it back at different times, or do you think there will be this swap over time? I know you talked about a certain period of time you swap over, or are you going to just release certain things as you feel you don't need them, like the spikes, for example? You're not going to need those once you get through whatever snow there is. Yeah,
I think that there'll probably be a one time when I feel like I'm out of quote unquote the winter, and I'll let go like the spikes and some other things, swap out the rain jacket, etc. And then I'll play it by ear. Do I still need the gloves? Do I need, the rain pants? So I could see there being, and one of the benefits that I have is I'm from Virginia, and you spend a lot of time in Virginia, and so my family's here, my friends are here, and people who are coming out to see me will more likely come to see me in Virginia. So I probably will have more than enough opportunities for someone to pick up a piece of gear from Cheryl and swap it out for me if they're going to meet me.
That's cool.
Meet me somewhere. So
that is a support team.
Don't know for sure.
That is a support team. Very helpful.
Great. But I think I'd much rather play it by ear, because you just don't know. And if you get it into another cold spell, I'll keep a lot of these items for another week or two.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay, well, that's the winter gear. So thanks for that update. And next week, we're going to talk about other gear. So this is basically going to be gear for the next few weeks as you finalise the things and you eventually weigh in on what you're going to be taking with you. So we'll catch up again next week. I'll speak to you then.
All right. Very good, Steve. Thanks again. Take care.
Cheers, Bruce. Bye. You can't say he's underprepared, can you? I tell you what, though, he needs to be very careful about the day he moves from pants to a kilt. A few chilly nights and he will be in all sorts of trouble. Thanks to Elizabeth McDonough for the question. Elizabeth, let me have your address and Trailtopia will be sending a couple of meals your way. Don't forget, Trailtopia are sticking with the show for Bruce's hike, so keep those questions coming and you'll get the chance of a couple of Trailtopia meals. Email me at steve@mightyblueontheat.com. Don't forget also to go over to Bruce's site, returningtokatahdin.com. You can have his blog there, pictures and just more stuff about the hike. Next week, we're talking food and resupply, as well as cooking and water filtration. This is getting very real now as Bruce counts down the days. Our current plan is to have our first interview when he is at the very start, at the top of Springer Mountain, having gasped his way all the way up the approach trail with Cheryl, his wife. I am so looking forward to that. Bruce and I will see you next week.